Hey guys, it's Sam here. Welcome to another episode of Modern Life. Today we're going to be talking about the movie X-Men First Class. It's going to be myself, Stacy, Tabby, and Brittni is also joining us today on this podcast. If you want to find us on social media, you can do so on Instagram and Twitter. Our handle is @ModernLifePod. You can also email us with any suggestions or things you want to hear us talk about on the podcast. The email for that is modernlifepod@gmail.com. So without further ado, let's get into it. All right, here we go. We're going to talk about X-Men First Class. We got Brittni back, our resident expert regarding everything. Taylor Swift, Marvel, and Hunger Games. Mm-hmm. Anything else you want to add on your resume?
Oh, Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't know she was a Wolverine connoisseur.
I love Wolverine. He's the only reason I dyed my hair red.
Really? Yeah.
The main reason was because I wanted to look like Jean Grey, because that's,
Wait, I didn't even know. What's your natural hair color?
blonde.
I had no idea. I feel like I've only ever seen you with red hair.
Yeah. No, yeah, everyone here has, because I dyed it a while ago. But yep, that's the reason.
All right. Well, also joining us, we got Tabby,
Mm-hmm.
and we got Stacy,
Hello.
and then myself. X-Men First Class. What do you want to start with?
Modern thoughts?
Oh yeah, I forgot about our modern thoughts.
What you got? Tell me about yours.
You got here. Let me switch. I got the
Yours.
wrong book in my hand.
Switch gears.
I totally forgot it all ready to go too. We kind of talked about this, Tabby and I'm subscribed to this magazine that talks all about like liquors and beer and wine and everything. And there was this totally offbeat article about the history of foot rails in bars, which I found to be really interesting because it's not anything I've ever put any thought into. But basically bars used to be like how like coffee shops are in Italy, where it's like you go, you get a couple shots and like back to work. It's just like in and out.
I like that.
Like you didn't used to like just sit at the bar top and linger forever. So it turns out human body's really bad at just kind of like standing for long periods of time. It like puts stress on your spine and everything. So these bartenders figured out, well, if we kind of make everyone more comfortable, I mean, first of all, they'll spend more money here because they're going to hang around more. And so bartenders started putting in these foot rails. And it's just, if you've ever used a foot rail, it's way more comfortable than just standing there. You kind of just, distribute the weight, you kind of switching feet. And so it started in bars. And I really like this one part of the article where it goes, foot rails are both altruistic and mercenary. They're altruistic because they're installed for the comfort of the drinker. They're mercenary because the more comfortable drinkers are, the more they'll spend. A modest investment in a foot rail can evidently lead to a pleasing return. And then obviously from foot rails, bartenders went, well, what if we just put in chairs? Then they'll hang out even longer and spend even more money. So it's just, I don't know. I find it was like a really interesting article. And now it's to the point where most bars will have foot rails just for the tradition of it. But then you have these bar stools that have their own kind of footrest. And then the foot rail, you really just are tripping over it when you're getting in and out of your bar stool. So it's like less function and more just, that's just how a bar looks. Like it has a foot rail,
So the magazine is called Imbibe.
It's called Imbibe, and they always have really interesting, like this whole, I think they put out a magazine every 2 to 3 months. And this whole magazine is like on the history of gin. And so it's just all these articles about gin, and they highlight all these bartenders from around the U.S. I don't know, there's just always really interesting stuff.
And also the photography is really
excellent. It's just a really nice magazine.
Like to subscribe.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Brittni, what you got?
Mine are about orcas. They're my favorite animals. And something that a lot of people don't know is like how the emotions of orcas, how like deep they run. And like orcas emotions are often compared to humans. Like they feel the same like loss, or they feel like they can feel the same anger, or they can feel like the same love. And like a fun fact, well, this isn't a fun fact. This is actually a really sad fact. But they did a study on it, and they like were following a pod of orcas around, and one of the mothers gave birth to a calf, and it died when it was born, and the mother actually carried it for 17 days, and it was the longest like
Damn.
record, and that was like proof of like how deep like their emotions run, that like it's
Right.
not just like, oh, toss it aside, like it literally carried it with it.
Huh.
But yeah, so that's kind of sad, but also it's really cool that orcas are that smart, so don't go to SeaWorld.
Did you ever see the documentary?
I did,
about
Blackfish,
SeaWorld?
yeah.
Yeah, and it goes in more the documentary, if you don't know, they find all these origins of this certain whale that caused all this trouble at
Yes.
SeaWorld and where they got it from. And the fisherman who captured it out of the sea, I think he said something like grabbing it away from its mom was
Yeah.
the most, it was the most gut-wrenching noise he's ever heard, and it still
Yeah.
haunts him to this day, the sound the mom made
Yeah,
when they took
because
the
they, like,
baby away.
They like keep like, you know, they follow each other for life, and that's the other sad thing about SeaWorld is like they'll just take them away and ship them to other parks.
Yeah.
Uplifting stuff.
Yes.
Mine is actually really quick. It's a YouTube channel. It's called Preppy Kitchen.
Ooh.
And it's a really high quality, high production cooking YouTube channel.
This is something you just discovered, or what?
I've been following it for a few months. The
Okay.
guy's name is John. He's very charismatic, and he just makes a lot of really fun cakes, cocktails,
that's
dinners, and
Like
in a-
everything.
yeah, in a really
Okay.
like non-patronizing way, shows you how to do all these things, and breaks it down in a way that makes sense too. Because a lot of times I'll look up ingredients for cakes, for example, and on the website there'll be an ingredient like in the body of the description, and then it never shows up. We've all had that problem.
Love recipe websites.
And then he also puts everything in European and American measurements, which I really
What a
appreciate.
guy.
So yeah, I would recommend checking it out. I think he makes the whole cooking and baking process a lot less intimidating and more fun. So
He's not like a food blog where he rambles on for
my
5 minutes.
God, yeah. The 3 paragraphs of the day I was born, my mother made chocolate chip.
We used to eat this dish all the time growing up. And one sunny afternoon, I remembered, and I... It's
Yep.
like, no, just give me the recipe, please.
That's great.
Yep. That's it, Stacy.
My fun fact, it's not really a fun fact actually. It's more of a opinion on the fact that there's like 5,000 diets out there, and how everybody keeps, jumping on the new bandwagon, but no one really researches like what actually
Happens.
each diet entails, or like how you're actually supposed to do it. They just like, oh, you're supposed to eliminate this. It's like, especially with like the new keto diet, which actually isn't a bad diet, but it's like really hard to follow through on it, because you need like the little like things to test to make sure you're still in ketosis, and then you also need to make sure that you're eating like 133 grams of carbohydrates at least, because that's what you need for brain function, so that it doesn't
I
turn.
thought you can't eat any carbs on the keto diet.
This is exactly my point. There's like a certain way you are supposed to eat carbs. You're supposed to be a certain type, and you're only supposed to eat a very limited amount, and you have to eat that amount in order for your brain to function correctly, and for you not to produce a negative amount of ketones, which is actually really bad for your body because it produces like an acid that your body can't use. And that's my point, is like people are constantly coming up with these new things about being on diet after diet, and it's just like, I don't know how many times like I'm sitting at a table waiting on them and they're telling me they're on a diet, and I'm like, they start like picking my brain about like what I know, and it's like, dude, you're on this diet and you don't even know what you're doing. It's very
people,
frustrating.
They asked me too, like at Whole Foods, they would always ask me, what can I have on this diet? I'm like, I don't know this diet. I don't know. You tell me. Can I have this dish? I'm like, I don't know.
That's crazy.
No, it's like crazy how many people, it's like they just have no idea like what they're supposed to get out of it, but they're doing it because they heard it's good for them. And it's like, you really should research, because your body, just because it's good for somebody's body, it doesn't mean that it's good for your body. And it kind of depends on like what type of activity level you do, or like, I was just listening to a podcast. I was listening to Conan, actually. He was talking to, what's his name? The guy that's...
I can't help you.
It doesn't matter. The point is that he has like this thing where he used to do intermediate fasting for like 2 days a week. He wouldn't eat, and he was constantly having people like ask him like 1,000 questions about the diet and like and it turned into this morphous of like he would never eat for 3 days and then he would eat like this huge meal, and it was like that's not what the diet was. Yeah. And then Conan asked him like, well, what happened once you start working out? And he's like, well, that's when the diet stopped, because when I started working out, like I couldn't do it anymore because it required so much more energy when I was working out than it was when and it's just like those little things that people just like don't have any realization to when they start something. And it frustrates me because yo-yo dieting is actually like the number one way to ruin your metabolism so that you actually fail at all diets or fail at. And the best way to do it is just, pick one type of eating that you can actually continue with and do that so your body can get used to it. But like it's very frustrating. That's my thought.
So you're saying people are a bunch of sheep?
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh yeah, that's the human race for you.
Speaking of fasting, it's Ramadan. Happy Ramadan. Just throwing that out there. I know it's really tough when you're living in a society where no one else is doing it and you're the only one doing it, and
we're happy for them.
We're happy for them.
Are you sure it's today? I swear I got the
notification.
notification.
It's been going on.
Oh, okay. I'm like, I thought I got the beginning of Ramadan.
I thought there was something like 3 weeks ago. I thought. What
started
holiday
about
is
a
it
week
where you
ago.
give people the matzah? What's that? Oh, that's Passover.
Yeah, you throw matzah at people.
Oh man, that's hilarious.
All right. Speaking of Jews and Jewish holidays, let's talk about Magneto and some X-Men here, all right?
Alrighty, we're talking about X-Men.
Such a great lead-in.
That was so great. That was perfect.
Came out in 2011. It's directed by Matt Vaughn, and we kind of go back to the 60s when the X-Men were first coming together. Everyone was happy and on
the Cold War. Why is it called First Class? Is it because of like the first class of X-Men?
Yes, that's
okay.
Exactly
That's what
why.
I thought.
It's like his first school
It's
class.
his first.
Sure.
His,
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it's supposed to be.
Okay.
That's what I thought. I just wasn't
Brittni,
entirely
how is
sure.
the school funded?
Well, he's
It's a
rich.
very-
His family is rich.
That's
Charles
no,
Xavier.
you can't just be infinitely rich though for the
Have you
rest
ever
of
met
your life.
trust fund children?
Yeah, no, you can, and it's
Yeah,
like it's like
It's
literally
from his family of money.
it's family money.
I
It's
just
like
feel
old
like
money.
that's always the thing. Like, oh, Batman's just rich forever, and then
it's
somebody
not-
actually did
Well,
the
Batman
math
actually
on,
like owns this giant company that keeps making him
Magneto's
money.
not rich. It's just Charles Xavier.
No, Magneto has all that gold. That's how he's been funding his stuff,
Yeah.
right? So he's doing fine.
But not family rich.
Oh, no.
No. This is like old money. Like it's
Yes,
just there.
exactly. Charles Xavier.
I'm sure he has businesses. They just don't go into it.
He probably has many investments.
Yeah.
Just think about these people that have inherited now all these really old estates and how much they're struggling to maintain them because it's not like the old
Well,
times
he turned his
anymore,
into a
and-
school, and that's not now. That's
Wait,
how
who?
he's
Like,
making
who are you
his money.
talking about?
Just like people nowadays who live in these really old grand houses who are really relying on tourists coming in and they can't maintain these like giant castles and most of them are
No,
going
it just
like
depends.
derelict.
It just depends how the money was managed.
He has a bunch
you know?
of mutated children to maintain his.
I thought they go there for
Castle.
free. You think they'd pay for
Oh yeah, for
tuition?
sure. I'm sure that they pay tuition.
Really?
I do feel like they probably maybe not all of them. I'm sure that there are some
Okay,
like scholarship
interesting.
opportunities, but but I feel like they probably. I feel like that's the only way that it makes sense that they're able to fund the entire thing.
Maybe he's just that rich. I don't know.
I don't think
I would think he would just have investments. Like
Yeah, I'm
Charles
sure he
Xavier's
does.
doing fine.
I don't know.
He's a smart guy. You can imagine he'd be smart with his money.
Oh yeah.
Okay, speaking about his house, I just want to fast forward real fast.
Uh-huh.
At the end of the movie, it like there's some reference. I forget who says it to Charles. They're like, "You're not afraid." Like, oh, the FBI lady.
Moira.
She's like, "You're not afraid. Like, they're gonna come find you, or whatever." And he basically says like, "Oh, they have no idea where I am." Meanwhile, he's at his childhood home. Like the FBI or CIA couldn't figure out like where his childhood home is. I don't know.
And also, everyone knows where, like, in the future, everyone knows where Xavier School for Gifted Students are. But it's just, like, covered up as, like, oh, this is a school for
that sounds a
very,
little
like,
silly.
very smart children. Very gifted.
But
children.
anyways, I'm going like way ahead.
That moment when Mystique and Charles first meet.
Yes.
It makes no sense to me, even though it's a really
No,
good
for sure.
one.
And it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense.
How
but
does she know what the mom sounds like? Like, there's a picture that you know what she looks like, but how?
She doesn't. And maybe that's why he knew. Maybe that's actually why he knew that it wasn't her. But it obviously is implied that the reason he knew is because my mother had never stepped foot in his kitchen in her life.
Okay, so here's a question I have. So she doesn't age, right?
Not really. She's kind of like Wolverine.
Okay, so if that's the case, then how come she's young in the beginning of this, and then
it's kind of like Wolverine, where like he got to a certain age where he stopped
and then he
aging.
just stopped aging?
Yeah.
Okay, but so in the comics, is it actually like is she actually young at the same time that X is young, or is she actually is that just more for this?
That wasn't a thing in the comics that
all, right?
that I'm aware of. No, I'm pretty sure they just did that.
Yeah, because like I read into it a little bit, and I was like,
Yeah.
and I'm not finding this storyline in all.
What I do like about it, even though because I love origin stories, like that's literally my favorite thing. Because I don't know why, but I've always just loved origin stories. So I like that they did it that way, just because like it gave us a chance to give all of these characters like a little background, even if it's not like their real background. It still gave us a chance to like see it on TV.
Well,
That's
yeah, like
cool.
another really big weird thing is like we were also talking about Banshee is actually supposed to be Cyclops' younger brother, but in this,
Oh no, Havoc is Cyclops' younger brother.
That's what I meant. Sorry,
But Cyclops actually in the newer ones, I think he in Apocalypse he's in it, but he's Alex's younger brother. Like they just switched the ages.
yeah.
So they
but
are
that's
brothers.
That's not how it is in the comics.
And
right?
the comics, Alex is older. Yeah.
Yeah.
But they still made them brothers. Like that's how they introduced Cyclops in Apocalypse was in like school. He he got his laser eyes because both of them have lasers. Like that's
Yeah.
And so Alex was like, "Oh, I'm gonna bring my brother. Like here, brother. Like this is the school. This is where you need to be." And then Cyclops was all like, "I don't want to be here." But we're not going to talk about those movies. They're not those. Yeah, we're not talking about those right now. So, but yes, you are correct. That is true.
Okay.
Can we talk about that scene with Kevin Bacon where the mom gets shot
Yes.
in the office?
Yes.
I like the setup, how the layout of it, how it's flipped around, and then we see the lab, on the other side. I do like that. I'm not a big fan of the like opera breath scream that child actor does after his mom dies. Yep, that's the one. I just don't. It didn't seem real to me. I don't know. That should be either more
so
guttural
funny?
or choked.
Well, I also don't understand why he directs his anger at at
for
everyone
sure.
but
Yes.
the one person that
Who just
actually
killed
took
his
the
mom?
shot.
It doesn't make
and
sense.
I'm like I get that he can't be injured, so maybe that like they didn't want to release that information.
Yeah, that's
yet,
exactly what I
But
think
at the
they
same
did.
time, like
But
that's not realistic.
It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't play out.
Yeah.
Like he literally destroyed a cabinet right by his head, but he couldn't hit him with it.
Cabinet.
Like
destroyed a cabinet.
it was a little. I was just like, this does not work for me.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. But yeah, no. What?
Oh wait, can Kevin Bacon absorb like
Energy.
physical?
Any kind of kinetic energy.
Yeah, any energy. So
okay.
yeah,
Kinetic
he
energy.
really
so
can't.
he could
be-
actually like punch a wall, and then that energy can reboot him.
Yeah,
Right.
he really can't be hurt. Like there really is anyway. But like like you just said, they don't want to show that. They don't even want to release
Right.
it until later. So because that would kind of just ruin the whole.
Yeah.
But it doesn't make sense. So yeah. But what's funny is that scream reminds me so much of in one of the later movies in Apocalypse, they have Jean do the same thing. And it was so like I'm watching it and I'm like, this is so stupid.
It's like Darth Vader level.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like long screams really work out. It just
Yeah.
always.
That's all you have to do is just scream and that fixes everything.
It shows how much your tension you're feeling
Yeah.
inside. It's like you can't express that without the scream.
Yeah.
So Magneto is like Jewish, grows up in Germany.
Oh, God.
I think.
Here we go.
I think in the comics he lives in like Israel at some point.
He's,
if I look
he's
this
also
up,
German too.
but he has a British accent in all
At
the
the
movies.
beginning of the movie.
You know?
Brittni, what you got?
And then American accent
know-
at the end of the movie.
you know, Fox, they just honestly,
Well,
I can't explain that. It's
who
just
plays
casting.
Magneto in the
Ian McKellen.
Ian McKellen.
Yeah.
Right, so obviously, because he has a British accent,
Yeah.
they had to kind of match that, I think. But
Well, why does Ian McKellen have a
right, I
British
still don't know
accent?
why it was ever a
no, it
British
doesn't
accent
really
in the
make
first place. Okay.
because he's an amazing actor. That's why.
Okay.
And it makes
He beat
me,
everyone out.
It makes me more upset because like Michael Fassbender is such a great actor,
Oh, yeah.
and there's no way he doesn't know how to do a German accent. If they had just asked him and directed him to do a German accent, we would have gotten
I'm sure he could have,
something that made more sense.
Well, he speaks German in the bar scene, and he sounds like he's from he's amazing at it.
Well, maybe he just like wanted to sound American. Maybe he was like, I want to sound
Okay,
American.
then why sound
British at the
British.
beginning of the movie.
So he's like supposed to be like have different so that he can play off
Maybe.
different things. Like
I don't know.
And if you're gonna do one, do it throughout the entire thing.
Yeah,
or
that would
explain
make
why
sense.
all
Yeah,
of a sudden
Michael.
not.
That's so like Storm. They did the same thing with Storm in the very first original one. She had like 3 different accents.
Oh, did she?
Because she's supposed to be African, but she had 3.
She had like Wakanda accent.
Well,
and
her
then-
in
supposed
the-
to.
her
in
and,
the comic, she marries T'Challa. Yeah.
Yeah.
She marries T'Challa.
Oh, does she
in the comics.
really?
Yeah.
Oh, I was just
Yeah.
making a stupid joke.
No,
I
and
didn't
there's
know.
like, sorry, I don't know anything about Marvel except for my stupid like card game that I'm obsessed with. And
Great
there's like,
card game, by the way.
there's cards that have both of them on it, and that's the only reason why I know.
But she's supposed to be. She's supposed to be like the queen of Africa. But yeah, she had 3 different accents in the first movie. I don't really know what happened there.
I wonder if they're gonna do that now that Disney bought Fox. They could totally like.
I'm hoping they
Black
do. I want
Panther.
Disney to just completely like try
Disney.
again.
Yeah, and also the thing.
Well, there's so much intermixing. Sorry, I talked over you again.
No, go ahead.
There's so much intermixing in the comic books of like the 3 different worlds that it's it would be interesting to see it now that it can actually be played out a little bit better.
And Disney does such a good job at like keeping timelines straight and like keeping the continuity right, which is like that's all I want because like Fox did so bad about that, like so bad. Like in the original, like the very first X-Men movie, that like Charles Xavier is talking about like, oh yeah, when I met Eric, I met him when I was 17 years old, and then they're definitely older than 17 in first class.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's a little like they just don't really keep timelines very well. They're just like, oh, they won't remember that, so we'll just
Didn't they mess up the timeline really bad in X-Men 2, like from X-Men 1?
I
don't remember.
They did mess it up a little bit. Yeah, the worst ones are definitely like when Xavier meets Eric, like that's all messed up. And then Jean's like aging is messed up because in the third X-Men movie, like Rise of the Dark Phoenix, they show her in the beginning, like in I think it's the 80s. It's either the 80s or early 90s. And they like show, like Jean's about like probably 12 years old, maybe a little younger than 12. And they like show like Xavier and Eric meeting her. And then they have Jean in the 80s and like the new Apocalypse movie, and she's like 18. So yeah, their timelines are a mess. But
it's also hard when you're doing like prequels.
Oh yeah, for sure. But
after the
Disney
fact.
did it. Disney did it.
Yeah.
They just need to be better.
All I was going to
Be
point
better.
out is Michael Fassbender is part German, and he used to speak German at home
Oh, yeah, I always
growing up.
forget that.
And that's why he's
So yeah.
that's why he's so
Yeah,
he
he's
speaks
great.
like a native in this. But then if you look at something like Inglourious Bastards, for example, he has a bit of an accent because that's what sets up that whole scene of events. Is
Right.
him having an accent. So there's no. It's just upsetting because it's like
Yeah.
there's no way he can't do the job.
And they
Right.
didn't just stick to one, which is
Yeah.
odd.
And that brings me to Kevin Bacon's terrible German act.
Yeah, but he's allowed to be terrible because he's an American, just like speaking German.
No,
he's not actually German.
Yeah, but in
Right.
the movie, he was supposed to be.
No, he wasn't. He
You're
was
supposed to be
it's just
German?
another role that he was playing.
Oh,
He's like supposed to be like because he doesn't age.
yeah.
So when he was German, that was one of his. I like did a little bit of research on him, which you probably know way more than I do. But he's supposed to like that clout thing is like
Wow.
one of his like alter egos, I guess you
Okay.
could say, like one of his
Okay,
things
yeah.
that he plants himself because he's been numerous things.
Well, I guess that makes sense then.
Because I mean, so what's that supervillain called? Something Shaw.
Sebastian.
Sebastian Shaw. He's like from Pittsburgh or
Yeah,
something,
originally
right?
from Pittsburgh.
So I don't know, just the way because I know you hate his accent. You're like, he's supposed to be German and he sucks at speaking German. And then when we looked it up, it just made more sense that he's just like this American working with the Germans, and like his Germans, he's allowed to have terrible German because he's not
but
German.
it's not just a bad accent. There's some lines he says, and I was taking notes, not looking at the subtitles, and I do not know what he said. Like how did the people he's working with, the other Germans, how do they know what he's saying? Because his German is so horrible.
Well, I mean, like, they're probably not, like, I mean, it's, once again, it's Fox. They're probably just like, oh, no one's going to catch it. Like,
I feel like they do that in a lot of movies where they completely mess up, like, when they're doing a different language, like, they don't really, they don't really ask a German to, like, tell them what to say. They, like, have somebody.
They just have the lines there, and they're just like, and if their acting is better in the one that doesn't make sense, then they're like, we'll use it.
It's just like you've had 5 lines. You couldn't get like a coach to help you out.
Maybe that's the best he could do. Okay?
Oh, Kevin, we love you though.
I'm sure he tried his best.
Kevin's a professional. I'm sure he tried his best.
He's fine. It's fine.
We don't know about his Russian in the movie. It's probably just as bad.
Yeah, probably. I totally forgot he speaks Russian. But then, like, Michael Fassbender speaks French too, and I don't know anything about French, but it sounds like he's doing a really good job.
Yeah,
like, sounds super French.
No, he is.
They should have just used all their languages and all their accents. They should have just done all of them.
Should have had Michael overdub Kevin Bacon's voice in the German.
That would have been great.
One thing so Kevin Bacon has his like special helmet that Magneto later takes, and I always thought that the helmet looks slightly too big on Kevin Bacon's head. But then when, Michael Fassbender, Magneto, puts on the helmet, it looks perfect, which makes total sense because they just made like one helmet that's supposed to... Because it's, everyone thinks of the helmet as like Magneto's helmet, so it would make sense that would look... I feel like they designed it around his face, and then was just like, well, Kevin, you have to put this on for half the movie. But it's like the bottom of the helmet, it like ends like literally right above his eyes. It just looks like it's a little too big.
That's so
But
funny.
then Magneto puts it on, like it looks just right.
Yeah.
Like, that's just something I noticed watching it again the other day.
That is funny.
Like I feel like they did the mold from Michael Fassbender, and then was like, Kevin Bacon, put this on.
It was never meant to be his.
It was not exactly.
Okay, so question, something that really bothered me in the movie, and I know everybody else thinks it's fine, but what about her, I'm sorry, I'm just blanking on her name.
J-Law?
What?
Mystique?
Yeah, Jennifer Lawrence is
Mystique?
like, I don't like how they changed her character's like costume in all of the movies.
Yeah, they totally did. And
I don't like the scales. I don't like the fact that she's naked. And the only reason I could find for it was that the original Rebecca... I can't pronounce her last name, but she's like a model, and so they wanted her to be naked because they wanted to show off how beautiful her physique was.
Yeah.
And that is why they created this entire
Back in
thing
the dark
for her.
days of the early 2000s.
Well, I really it bothers me that they like completely changed her entire appearance. And then I feel like Jennifer Lawrence like had adapted it, and they had an opportunity to like change it. Instead, they just adapted the old thing.
Yeah.
And I don't think she looks as good like that.
Yeah,
like,
I mean
the original was like she was beautiful.
Yeah,
it worked for her kind of. Even
what are you
though
saying
it
about J-Law? She's not beautiful.
No, I think she's beautiful. I just don't like
how. But also on top of it,
words.
I don't like the coloring that they did on J-Law's is just like so bright and vibrant that I think that's part of it, that it just like stands out way too much. And the old Mystique is a little more like muted and like toned down. Which,
a little bit. I think it was the red,
and it looks
it was like the red hair.
The hair is like way too fiery.
It's just not. It didn't work for me, and I really it bothered me throughout the entire.
Mystique was always like one of my favorite characters in the old ones because I just thought she was like really interesting. Also, she had a crush on Wolverine, which I could relate to. So, I was very critical of like J-Law's performance as Mystique, and I like went into this a little more like before when we talked about it in the Hunger Games, and it's just something to me like the costume of it is like a little cringeworthy to me. Just the whole.
Are you blaming it all on J-Law though?
No, it's not all on J-Law.
Okay.
A lot of it.
She didn't create the costume.
She didn't
I don't know
create the
why they
character,
did that red hair. Like so, it was so different than the one.
Yeah,
the
it's
original
very,
one.
very.
It was just like so bright. It looked fake. It looked like it was a wig the
Yeah.
entire time. It didn't look like real hair.
Yeah.
It like
for sure.
And then the whole imaging thing of like, why does she have to be naked Like, she's not naked in
Mutant and
any of
proud.
the comic books. She's always wearing clothes.
Yeah.
So why is it like, why is she naked in
I guess
in the
they
movie?
just thought it would be empowering.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I think they also put a little too many prosthetics on her face, and then it makes her eyes and the rest of her features look really small.
yeah.
Yeah.
When she's transitioning, I always look at her face like something's off. Like something's
Even the
not right.
little Mystique looks more realistic. Like if you
Yeah,
think about it.
that worked for her.
Yeah.
It just, I don't know if
And
it
I
was
think
just
it's
J-Lo's
because they
facial
didn't
expression.
do so much detail also on the little one,
Yeah.
and they just went to town on J-Law.
So this movie is a year before Hunger Games comes out, and I feel like we're getting like 20-year-old, maybe probably 19 when she filmed it. We're getting like really young
Because
Jennifer
she's supposed
Lawrence.
to be super like
No, I know, but
immature.
her acting in this falls a little flat for me, but that's okay. Like I feel like she's just like growing into being like a better actor.
Have
but
you watched the other ones?
I have, yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's obviously better. I'm just saying this is like one of the first
Yeah, for
major
sure,
roles
for
she
sure.
did, and like the acting falls a little flat, but she's obviously, she becomes away. Like I just feel like if you watch her acting in this compared to Hunger Games, it's just like a world.
I feel like she
just grew.
I feel like
into a better
she
actor.
herself probably relates more to Katniss than Mystique too, and that probably helped.
Yeah.
Well, and also this is, if I remember correctly, one of her first action roles too. If you take something like really dark and dramatic, like Winter's Bone, where she was nominated for an Oscar,
Yeah.
she's just amazing in that. And that was one of her first roles too. Yeah,
I feel like also that J-Law doesn't really do sexy very well.
No, I don't.
So,
think so
and
either.
Mystique
really,
is
I liked
very...
her in
Mystique
American
is-
Hustle. She was
Yeah, but it's
but
like
she was so funny in that.
it's like a funny section.
Yeah, it's not like
Which that's
not
really
like
funny that you
just-
brought that up because like we have the TVs on at work all the time and they're like right now blasting all these, I think it's like it's one of the Chanel fragrances or whatever, and they have Jennifer Lawrence just like wet hair like in the
I've seen
pool
that
and she's
one.
like dipping out of the pool slowly, and it like so I just don't see her as this
Yeah.
like elegant sex because she's like this
She's not.
clumsy every
yeah,
woman.
she's awkward.
And
Yeah,
so I see those ads, it always cracks me
No,
up.
for sure.
Because it's just like, that's like not her.
I agree.
And
with
that's
that,
and
too.
I think that's what I have a big problem with, like believability in her character is just like, she's not for one, she doesn't seem comfortable.
No, and I don't.
And she definitely doesn't come off as sexy. So all the scenes where she's like seducing people, I'm like, what are you doing? Like,
Yeah.
you're just I would laugh.
Yeah, and in the old movies, Mystique was very like she was like
super like
come
elegant.
off super sexy,
Yeah.
and like she was constantly trying to seduce Wolverine.
Well, if you remember like
yeah.
her action scenes in those early X-Men movies, she's always doing this, I feel like really elegant like martial
Gymnastics.
arts,
Yeah.
gymnastics.
Yeah.
It's always like
She kills
super
it.
graceful and
Yeah.
this is not the
And
vibe.
she's,
I
like,
There's
got.
like a
super flexible
fluid motion
Yeah,
to everything
she's
she
super
does that you just like
flexible
do not
and,
get
yeah.
in this in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, and
I still
J-Law,
think she does great. Don't listen to them. J-Lo.
she doesn't even want the part.
This is the thing. I love J-Law. You know that. I'm like
I just
obsessed
think
with her.
if you
but this
compare-
particular role did
Yeah.
not work for her.
No,
in my
I don't
opinion.
think so either.
And just also if you compare her in this movie compared to someone a little more seasoned like your James McAvoy and I think Michael Fassbender, who just goes like, I feel like he goes all out acting in this movie. Like he's just totally
James McAvoy,
fantastic.
This was like his dream role. Like I don't know if you guys know this, but like when he found out that he got casted for it, he went and shaved his head the next day. And
I
then
didn't know that.
He showed up and they were like, "I'm ready," and they were like, "No,
Oh,
we needed
no.
your hair." So for like the first half of the movie, he's actually wearing a wig.
Oh, I did not
That's
know
why it
that.
looks so weird. I kept looking at his hair. That's why it looks
That's
so weird.
amazing.
Oh
yeah,
my
that's how
God.
dedicated he was to this.
ready to go,
That is a great story.
I've never heard that.
Oh man, yeah, Michael Fassbender. He has just such a power.
Yeah, I
Like
think
when
I think
he's on screen.
his performance is the best in
His
this movie.
performance
I feel
is
like.
beautiful.
I also think his character is the most well written in this movie.
and
and the
anyways,
most developed. 'cause
like
you actually
yeah,
kind of,
and just Magneto. Anyways, he's such a good villain. Like I just
Yeah.
love him, and like just everything that he's been through just creates who he is,
Mm-hmm.
and almost makes you like. I mean, even when I was younger watching it, I used to be like that when you in the Dark Phoenix movie when you're like on the menu screen
Mm-hmm.
before it takes you to the menu, it's like will you like join the Brotherhood or take a stand? And I literally, as a child, was like, nah, I'm going to join the Brotherhood.
You mean the last Stand movie,
Well, I
the
feel
third
like-
one?
Yeah.
I feel like the thing about Magneto is he has a likability, and I think that with any good villain, if there's not a
Yeah.
likability, like you
Then
don't
you did it wrong.
understand why
Yeah.
like people
Then you
want to
get it
follow him. Like
Yeah.
it's and I'm not giving him any credit, but like it's with the new Avengers and Locust. Like everybody loves Locust.
Locust?
That's why, yeah.
Loki?
Loki.
Yeah.
Sorry.
What?
And that's why I feel like that's why everybody,
I don't know
like why
that
he
much.
keeps
Yeah,
reappearing.
for
It's
sure.
because everybody likes him because there's like
A lot
a
of
weird
times-
likability with him.
And most, like, in a lot of series, I usually like the villain the best. And this is definitely a good example of, like, that for me. I love Magneto. And
Well, I
he's
think
amazing.
where Marvel falls flat so often are the villains.
Yeah, for sure.
And
I would 100%.
like,
Steve
there
said
are-
that on our Casino
Yeah.
Royale podcast.
There's so few good villains in the Marvel movies, and Magneto is
That make you
like,
love. Yeah.
consistently. I think what's so great about him is like, especially with the X-Men, you have Charles Xavier and Magneto. I feel like I'm never 100% for each one of them. I feel like
Yeah.
they're both slightly
They're both
right with their
amazing.
points, which is what makes that dynamic so great. Is
Yeah.
like they both have good points about the way
And
they want
then
to handle things.
to even, like, make it better is they used to be friends.
Right.
That's what, like, makes it even better is, like, they both have great points and you're like, which one do I follow? And they used to be friends.
But Magneto
yeah.
is always, I mean, you always see like the humans doing shitty stuff to the mutants, and like that's totally Magneto's point. Like, why are we putting
Yeah.
up with this?
Exactly.
So you always kind of see his point of view, which I
And I'm a human and I still
Right.
agree with him. He's convinced me.
so I feel like if you can relate at all to the villain, like that's what makes a
Yeah,
great villain a lot
For
of the time.
sure.
I think it was a really tall order to find a pair that could in any way come close to Ian McKellen and Patrick
Yeah.
Stewart.
Oh, yeah,
I Right.
Two
Good
of the
point.
greatest actors we have to this
Right.
day. And Jim McAvoy and Michael Fassbender just kill it in every scene, especially
bromance.
Yeah.
when
It
he's
was
trying
beautiful.
to move the satellite dish.
Mhm,
Oh,
great.
that
Just
scene.
That
oh my
scene
God.
where he's like crying,
Beautiful.
fingering up that, and then it shoots back to James McAvoy, and he's wiping his tear
Yeah.
away. I'm like crying right now.
Yeah.
So good.
I know. I know. I'm getting chills.
Yeah, they're both
beautiful.
fantastic.
And the scene where he gets like shot. Now, granted, there's like the bleeding out thing that you pointed out. That the reality, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, if you
but-
get shot in the back, don't lie on your back. Lie on your stomach.
Yeah.
You all know.
Yeah.
I don't think that would have worked.
He was controlling the blood flow with his brain. Yeah.
I like want to imagine
I
him
just-
talking
In
to
the
his butt,
sand,
but
he's like peeled over in the sand.
I just imagine the alternate ending on the DVD, and it's just James McAvoy's face in the sand, and
Yeah.
he keeps having to lift it up to like talk to him.
I
There's
can't feel
sand
my
in
legs.
his face.
Head back in the sand, head back up. I can't feel my legs.
Yeah,
Head back
they're
in
all
the
like
sand.
holding hands, teleporting away, and I'm like, does anybody want to teleport him to a hospital?
Yeah, like
maybe?
I would just send the devil guy to, hey, can you bring him to the
Azazel,
hospital
yeah.
and like bring him right back? That would be great, and then
Right?
we'll go our separate ways.
And a fun fact about Azazel, actually, that a lot of people don't know, is in the comics, Azazel and Mystique actually have like an affair. They have
Yeah,
like, a
that's
little
how they
passionate
get
affair.
Crawler, right?
And Nightcrawler's their
Nightcrawler's
kid.
their kid.
And I was so excited for Apocalypse because like they were teasing in that, like, oh, like Mystique is gonna like talk about Nightcrawler being her son. Like they show that, and then they didn't
Never
ever touch it
happened.
at all. And I was so angry. I was like, that was a perfect
See,
opportunity.
we were wondering
Huh.
about that because she remembered that Tabby remembered that it was like that Mystique was, but she couldn't remember where she came up with that information, and I
Yeah.
had found it when I was doing research for this podcast, and I couldn't remember if we actually had touched on that in the movies.
No, they
Yeah,
didn't.
because I thought
But they
this
should've.
person was Nightcrawler. This is Azazel
This is
character.
Azazel. This
I
is
thought
his
was
dad.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then it all makes
So
sense.
that Dark
now.
Phoenix movie's coming out because I feel like at some point they have to talk about it because
I feel
eventually the timeline's going to interlap with
Yeah.
the old X-Men, right?
Well, yeah, because at the end of Days of Future Past,
Mm-hmm.
they like have at the end of the scene like Wolverine walks in and like Jean's there
Mm-hmm.
right in the door and like Scott's there and he's like, and Storm's there, like they're all there. And like it's the original actors, so it's like supposed to be like, oh yeah, see, like we went back to
Mm-hmm. Oh,
like
yeah, that's
everything.
right.
Everything happened, all the original movies are real, but it doesn't make sense because the timeline is
I
completely
remember that
off.
movie being such a mess. I couldn't.
Which one?
Days of Future Past.
yeah, for sure.
Oh man,
I think I remember seeing that in the theater. I was just like, what
that was
is
the first
happening?
time that I was watching that, and I was like, I don't know how I feel because like I was really angry that they were making Mystique the main character in it,
Mm-hmm.
and they were just completely focusing on her. And I was like, why are they doing this? Like, she's not a main character.
Because it's
like,
Jennifer Lawrence, and
exactly.
she was the
And that's
biggest
what
star in the
happened,
world at that
is
point.
They were like, oh, we have Jennifer
Yeah.
Lawrence. Like, let's make her our main character. And I was so angry about that they just had such an opportunity and they completely missed it.
It's weird how it completely. So Hunger Games comes out a year later, and Jennifer Lawrence becomes
up.
this huge star. But then she's probably like contractually obligated to keep doing these X-Men movies, and they just make her part so much bigger because they have to pay her like $20 million a movie now, probably. Yeah. So yeah, it's weird how that changed. Because she is story? Like, she's like the main character in some of those newer movies,
which is a shame because it could have been so good if they had just done it right. Instead of
actually, speaking of Days of Future Past, because I feel like that was like if you kind of look at it like pre-Avengers, where it's or like pre-Avengers Endgame. The one thing that Endgame that just came out does, to its credit, it is so ambitious and it does kind of pull off having all these characters in the movie. And then you look at something like Days of Future Past where you have all these X-Men and it's just such a mess.
Yeah,
and it's like how not to do that.
Yeah, so. Marvel probably like watched Days of Future Past
and like, what can we not do?
What do we not do? So yeah, and that's why I'm not super like I'm not super stoked for Dark Phoenix because just Apocalypse was. I can't even talk about Apocalypse. It was just so disappointing.
I have a question about Emma Frost because she's in my Marvel game.
She's the one in the white leather suit, right?
Yeah, she's in my hero cards and in my villain cards. Is she supposed to be good or is she supposed to be evil?
She does both.
Yeah, she's like
she
an
wavers.
anti-hero, you know.
Oh.
Yeah, go ahead. You know way more than I do.
She like I don't know a whole lot about Emma Frost, but I know she's an anti-hero. So she's kind of like, you know.
I know she went from the research that I did. She did go to Xavier's school in the comics, and then she was always kind of like she went back and forth depending on kind of like a yeah.
It's kind of
she was like part of the good kind.
Like
yeah, exactly. She was part of the good kind for a little while, and then she was like, "Oh, I don't want to do that anymore." And then she like, so it was kind of wishy washy.
I thought this Hellfire Club was like a chess club.
No,
it's not.
No, it's an old group of villains. And
like
actually, Shaw was the one of the original Hellfire thing. He was like the Black Knight or something, right?
Well, they all played chess on all the cards, so I thought it was a chess club.
They probably played chess at one point.
Hellfire clubs were actually for persons of quality in the 18th century. There were like these private clubs that were established, so it was a real thing that they used.
That's cool.
I want to talk about the first third of this movie.
Okay.
Because I feel like the first quarter to third of this movie is like really just tight and toy like a toy guy, and it's just like spot on. And like you have the bar scene with Michael Fassbender.
We need to talk about that scene.
And I love that scene.
Yeah, which we will get to. And just the whole intro with the whole World War II, obviously like Nazi camp background, and it's just like really gritty, and I feel like it's just really good. You have kind of everyone meets each other, and then kind of I feel like the last third of the movie, the action gets a little silly at parts, and it's just really different from the beginning of the movie. And I don't know, I feel like I would watch a whole movie of just Michael Fassbender like hunting down Nazis as Magneto. I feel like they did that just so well, and I almost wish this movie was a little bit more of that, just a little more gritty.
Origin. Yeah, exactly.
Because it starts off like really dark and gritty, and then at the end of the movie, it's like
more playful and kind of. We're gonna start a school. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I
get that.
But let's talk about that bar scene if you want, because it's like Tarantino-esque.
Yeah.
Really well done.
That scene was what I remembered about this movie. I think it's one of the best scenes in this movie.
Yeah, it's really good.
And especially the colors, the really gold color of that. And I didn't realize until this watch through that it's the color of Bitburger. That's what sets up the whole scene. It's the color of the beer, and then the entire scene is the color of that beer.
Yeah, it's like a yellowish bar. Huh?
Yeah. And oh man, it's so good.
It's done so well. Yeah.
and it like builds with the music and the tension. I just want to point out that Henry Jackman did the music. He also did the music for Uncharted 4, which is, I think, one of the greatest video game soundtracks out there.
It is video game. She plays it all the time.
All the time.
Over and over and over again.
But just him like revealing, you know, his like numbers on his forearm, and the guys at the table just like choking up, and they're like, "Oh shit, it's about to go down." It's just done so well.
Also, just the dialogue. It was like the pig farmer and the what is that? A tailor. The other guy's a tailor. It's just great.
Yeah, it really keeps you on the edge of your seat because you're just like, oh my gosh, what is he gonna do?
Especially because we call back to that. I think in Germany, the difference I see a lot in our cultures is America is very obsessed with their military prowess, and my son's in the army. Everybody has that sticker on their car.
Yeah,
and they take a lot of pride in that structure. And in Germany, that saying like, "Oh, I was only following orders," is a trigger, and it's like something we're taught in schools never to say and always to use our own judgment. So we're not that authority driven. I feel because we've had that history,
right?
And having that line in the movie where the Nazis like, "Wir hatten unsere Befehle," like we had our orders, and then later on James McAvoy says that like, "Oh, they're just following orders."
Right.
It's a really great callback to these very different ways of they've been brought up, because like you said, the first third of this movie is the contrast between our main characters. It's like this guy's having a great life and education and drinking at the bar, then it cuts back to, you know, Magneto sitting like in Geneva in the
bars.
hotel.
Like, that's
it's so great. Like love that.
I also love.
I love Magneto's line when he first sees the thing. "Oh yeah, you really had it hard." Or like, what did he's like? As soon as he sees the big castle, and he's like, "Oh, you really
hard up."
Yeah.
But I love and Xavier's scene, what like in his bar scene when he walks up to the girl, the first thing that I noticed when I was watching it was the hectochronium is like supposed to be like an Easter egg. In the original ones, the Xavier almost died to a student that had hectochronium, and like that was a big thing in the original movies.
Oh, okay, I didn't remember that.
I don't know. I didn't know that.
It was Stryker's son. I don't know if you guys know.
No.
But yeah, it was Stryker's son. He was also a telepath. He was really strong too. But
yeah, I would watch Magneto Nazi Hunter X-Men spin-off movie all day long.
Yeah. And that's a thing about Apocalypse. It started so good because it was kind of like Magneto went and he got married and he had a daughter, and like you're like, oh, he's finally getting like this happy life, and then his wife and his daughter were murdered, and you're like, oh, this movie. Like when I was watching it, I was like, this movie is gonna be so good. Like,
wait,
this
is that
awesome.
The same as in the comics?
It's
like,
it
is that supposed to go back to him having a daughter? Because his wife doesn't die in the comics, right? Like just his daughter.
But his daughter does. Yeah, she's murdered by people.
So is that like a timeline?
With the comics.
I did research, so I like to like figure it out.
Yeah, it's definitely not the same. It's supposed to just like kind of like hint to it because his daughter in the comics actually wasn't a mutant, the one that died, and in the movie she was.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, but they use the same name and everything just to kind of like, you know, show the similarities there, but it's a little different. But the way that they did it was I was so excited. And then the movie just kind of kept going downhill after that.
I mean, just a quick, I think any great origin movie has a great montage.
So many good montages.
And there's a great training montage.
I
when they
love
all get
that.
together.
Also, the mutant finding montage. That's
true. Another montage.
Yes!
A lot of montages.
And we saw Wolverine.
Yeah, I totally forgot about his cameo.
That
Because I hadn't seen this movie. I saw this movie when it first came out, and maybe like one time after that, and I totally forgot that Wolverine cameo was in there. I was like, oh, hey!
So I love that.
Also, the cut too from the Cerebro, where he's like in there.
Yeah,
and
you
it cuts
see
to the bar.
Yeah,
And
And the one in that scene, you see Storm as a little girl. I don't know if you guys know that, but Storm was a little girl's in there. She's at the doctor. Yeah.
Oh, I think I missed that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go back and look at it.
Rewatch it.
That was supposed to be Storm. Oh, okay.
Yeah, what transitions to the strip club, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Right. Mm-hmm. Which, speaking of the strip club, I think that's my least favorite. This little like
Angel?
butterfly angel
Angel?
lady. It's just like a weird superhero.
Well, she's like a legit superhero,
Yeah.
but they really I don't like how they develop her character because she was really different in the.
Yeah, I feel like they just needed a lot of times, like even Marvel will do this too. They just take a character from the comics and like they just take because they have already written a character themselves that they're like, this is what we want for this character. This is how they're going to develop, and they're like, okay, we'll just use this one. That works, and they just take it and like make it how they want instead of and like they in I don't want to say I was gonna use Endgame as an example, but I don't want to say any spoilers, so I'm not going to say anything.
Oh, it's fine. I think
We're
everyone's seen
It's
it.
okay.
The entire world.
Spoilers.
Everybody's seen it? Okay.
Everybody's
Spoiler
seen
alert.
it.
Spoiler alert, Tony's daughter, Morgan Stark, is actually like in the comics, Tony's cousin is Morgan Stark. And Morgan Stark hates Tony and like spends his whole life trying to destroy Tony because he thinks that he was cheated out of the Stark fortune. And instead of like, using that actual character from the comics, they just took like Morgan Stark, the name and everything, and gave it to his daughter. And they recreated the character their way
Right.
because, they were like, we know we want to have Tony have a daughter and we'll just use this character instead because that works.
That makes sense.
And that's kind of what, they did with Angel in this circumstance.
She was like a badass in the comics, like
Yeah.
more of a like
The whole like butterfly wings, and then when you first see her like superpower, like I can spit fireballs, like
Yeah.
it's just all kind of silly. And then she never seems to change out of her stripper clothes the whole movie. She's
Yeah.
like flying around.
That's who she is.
The whole character
Yeah.
is like a little weird.
And then they never use her again, which is like,
Yeah,
I love those tattoos, though.
Tattoos are great.
That's
yeah, it was
really-
cool how they did like the,
Can I have a little 1 minute TED Talk session about?
yeah.
Let me just
About
step on
tattoos?
my podium. No, I have a lot to say about Zoe Kravitz's character because that character makes no sense. Like, just I understand. I think we see at the facility why she wouldn't want to stay there. We see
Yeah.
a lot of evidence
Right.
of people being like, "Oh, the mutants aren't there. We don't really care about them. Like they're freaks."
Right.
And then there's also, I don't know why they put two people like of color in this. One turns evil for no reason. The other one dies right away.
Yep.
We're left with all these like whitey tighties, Ron Weasleys. Like,
I know. I was literally watching this thinking like, they should have just had Rupert play that part.
yeah, it looked the
Yeah,
same.
they look exactly the same.
And with her, it's set up like a false choice, as if she only has a choice to go either with Kevin Bacon or stay there, where she could just leave and not do anything.
Yeah.
And she's like,
Interesting,
"Oh,
yeah.
men have been like taking advantage of me all my life, and that's the only motivation we get." And this part really doesn't age well in this movie.
Yeah. And then we
Because-
never see it again.
because I think we're now a little bit more conscious of, the rights and people working in the sex industry, and that it's not always like this sad drama story. And the movie sets it up like that, like, oh, she's a stripper, so of course she's unhappy. And you have that line of Xavier is like, oh, you want a job where you can keep your clothes on? And it's the 60s, so I'm not faulting him for that line.
Yeah.
But it's set up in a way where the audience is supposed to agree with Charles
Yeah.
in that scene.
Right.
Yeah.
And then also, like, Kevin Bacon could have just teleported into that room and been like, you guys want to come with me? Instead, he, like, drops every single person from the sky.
Yeah, but I think that was supposed to be
I
like,
didn't think about that.
I think that was more supposed to be him being like,
Demonstrating
I
his
hate
power.
the humans. Yeah, like he doesn't care about the humans.
Yeah,
He
it
wants
just,
them to die. So
that character wasn't developed enough for me to believe that she now is going to go with him, kill everyone, like she's suddenly evil.
yeah,
she's
well, because it
flying
is really
around.
weird that she just watched him literally like murder all these people, and then she's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna go with you."
I would
or
make
that she like watched like the one people that she connected with
for the
like,
first time
for the
ever.
first time, like
She's just
she's like
leaving them.
watches them die. Like he tries to save her, and she still like goes with them. Like that doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah,
that
even after
character
killing
development.
Darwin.
Yeah.
And she's like, this
Yeah.
is
Who was
fine.
trying to save her?
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Was like literally put himself into harm's way to like block her from the
Yeah,
attack.
to
and
show
then-
her like this
yeah.
is how much we care about you.
And then she still
Yeah.
goes like doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
Yep, it definitely
I'm
didn't
just-
age
that,
well.
that whole scene doesn't really work. It's really just there to like
just to
give Kevin Bacon a cool scene. Also, what's the devil guy's name?
Azazel.
It's a weird name. Azazel. He's like you see these people just dropping out of the sky and like hitting
it's
the
really
concrete.
violent.
The fact this movie is PG-13 is insane to me. And then like the whole part, like I don't know, when they're in that like CIA facility and they're partying, and then Xavier and Magneto like, we thought higher of you. Meanwhile, the next scene, Magneto like. When they're invading that Russian guy's house, he's like, well, screw you guys. And he just kills civilian, like, totally doesn't stick to the plan.
Well,
so he's not being professional
he's not expecting that much from Magneto. He expects it from Raven.
That scene doesn't really hold up when they give the kids shit about partying. Because, I mean, they're just like... They didn't like do anything that bad.
And
like,
they just found out that there's like other people like them.
Yeah.
And they can actually like be themselves and like show their like... Yeah, it didn't work for me.
It doesn't really work because then So then they leave them behind to go on that Russian mission, and then Kevin Bacon. It's like kind of this forced setup.
Yeah, I think that scene was just like trying to start the split between Raven and Xavier. I think that's what that was for. Was to try to like put that like in Raven to be like, oh, like, you know, he never lets me be me and blah 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 blah. Yeah. To give her like to give you that feeling more comfortable when she does leave, because you're watching it thinking like, oh yeah, like this is how he's always treated her. So of course she wants to leave.
Done that.
Yeah, they definitely could have done it in a better way. But I feel like that's what they were doing.
Yeah, I just feel like they could have done that with just like building her relationship with Magneto.
For sure, yeah.
I feel like that was a better way. Like to me, that worked better. In terms of her storyline, of her storyline with Xavier, because him seeing her and always constantly telling her like she's just be yourself, you know what I mean? And then Xavier always telling her to hide. Yeah, like that was where they should have.
They should have like played that up more.
Was just, like so unnecessary.
Yeah. And then I think the whole scene with Kevin Bacon coming in, that was just kind of like them trying to explain like what he was doing. I feel like they could have done it in a better way. Once again, the scene where like Xavier's looking into Emma Frost's mind. Mm-hmm. That was great. That was like such a good way of like showing like what the plan was.
Right.
But that was them just trying to show like this character is really evil and this is his plan. But he likes mutants.
Yeah.
His plan also makes no sense. Yeah. He wants nuclear war. Not every mutant can withstand nuclear
of course.
war.
He'd probably just think if they can't withstand it, then they're not truly mutant enough.
I think that was just an attempt to use like something that was actually happening at a time,
right?
To like make it more believable in the plot line.
I looked into that because this movie tackles a lot of things, and the director, either the director or the writers I was reading about, was saying yes, this takes place around the same time as the civil rights movement, and they tried to put some commentary in there, which just wasn't enough. But they were like, if we had to tackle that topic too, we couldn't just do it as another topic because it deserves way more time.
Makes sense.
And I think that's what has always drawn me to the X-Men. It's kind of one of the only comic book things I'm really into because it's less action and more, moral choices. Yes. And what does it, what does it mean to be a mutant and people being against you? To be different.
Yeah.
I think I tend to like superhero movies more that are grounded in like Wonder Woman, World War I, right? And this is kind of grounded in World War II and Cold War. Like I like when stuff's like kind of grounded in history a little bit.
It.
Exactly. Yeah. Not like we're flying into space.
Yeah. It makes it more real.
Galaxy, we're getting Captain Marvel. That's all fun and cool, but I personally prefer just stuff you can relate to.
Yeah, because it makes it seem more real. Because then like you leave the theater thinking like, are mutants really real? Like, is this real?
They're not, Brittni.
I know. I wish they were.
Because it also is significant, and the movie doesn't make any commentary on this. It's kind of up to the viewer to recognize this, that when Mystique transitions into a human, she's a blonde, white woman. That's her best way of fitting in. She's not going to be black. She's not going to be, I think that's very important to Mystique and her story. And all those scenes are brilliant. That scene where she finds out there's somebody like almost like disfigured like her, like Beast, and J-Law's like the look on her face, and she has so much joy in her, and then to find out that even these people can't accept themselves or her, and try, Beast is always trying to
that he said that he literally says to her like, I'm sorry, but like your natural blue form and my feet are never going to be deemed beautiful in this society. Like, then, like she's just kind of, because she's like trying to convince him, like, like, let's just be us. Like, let's just, like, what, like, you know, this is who we are. Like, let's just be us. And he, like, literally tells her, like, no, we can't, because, like, no one's ever going to accept us, like, no matter what. And it, like, the look on her face where she's just like,
yeah, she plays that really well.
Yeah.
She's the dramatic scenes she's really good in.
well, that's what she does.
That's what she does.
That's what she
Well,
does.
And she's not saying
even,
she's bad in this movie, but it's just compared to her later stuff.
and even
like,
still, in the action parts, that's not even her. She has a stunt double. She's not even doing, like, a lot of the action.
Right. No, it's just something that stood out to me in those things that they all did that really well. I also really love Nick Holt as an actor.
He's great.
He's phenomenal.
That's the one that plays Beast, right?
Yeah.
I really like him.
They dated in real life, and then it turned out really
like a
bad.
million times,
On and off for like 10 years. Yeah.
Now they have to do the movies together, and it's so awkward.
One thing that doesn't really work, so when they're at the CIA like headquarters and they're all hanging out, there's like this over the top, like, you know, these like movies that like certain civil rights movies, or like where people are being racist and like every white person is like over the top racist. That's how I feel like at the CIA facility. Like everyone is being just such an a-hole to these mutants. It's like a little over the top.
But think about it. In real life, people who like are that way, how would they really react to people like that?
I'm just not saying like every single person at the CIA besides like that one guy who takes them in. It's a little over the top. I don't know.
Maybe the CIA is just really bad at hiring morally sound people.
I'm sure they are.
Yeah, I mean, this movie's also trying to say something about the women's rights movement with a few things thrown in there, and it's like, again, it's a little too caricature.
Yeah.
It tries to do it in a funny way.
Right.
It does try to do maybe a little too many things.
Yeah, for sure.
There's
a lot to cover here.
But there was a lot going on.
Yeah, there's a lot to cover.
During that era, so to have to pull in all those was actually, like, that was what people were dealing with, you know what I mean?
I don't like James McAvoy putting his 2 fingers to his temple every time he does something. I'm over it. I think there's a better
they didn't have to
visual like cue to let the audience know what's happening.
Does he do that in the original X-Men?
No, I mean, he does sometimes, but not all. Like, I'm just now thinking about that. Like, he doesn't do it all the time.
Stewart doesn't need to do
Patrick.
He literally, like,
every single scene, he's like, ugh.
When he's in the bar and he's like, "No, lady will have a brandy." It's like, okay.
I wonder if that was just a choice by James McAvoy to like, this is what my character's gonna do, and then he just
it wasn't your character.
He just kind of ran with it. I don't know.
You're borrowing it.
I wonder if it was him or like someone told him to do that.
I don't know. But yeah, that was pretty silly. They didn't have to do that. I'm like just now thinking about that. That's disappointing.
It's like Ewan McGregor when he's Obi-Wan. He's always doing the lightsaber noises, and they had to cut it all out because he couldn't stop.
Funny.
Like, doing the lightsaber noises.
One thing I think is just going back to Mystique. I forgot to mention this earlier when we were talking about her. I feel like she's fairly useless in this movie. At the very end, she like kicks one guy in the face. Remember, I was laughing at the end of the movie where she comes out of the wrecked like ship and she kicks the guy to like save James McAvoy's life or whatever, and then she's like, like, look, I did something.
Yeah, she
like doesn't fight in this movie.
I feel like the whole movie she's just being super dramatic, and like you see the scene where she's like lifting the weights. So it's supposed to be like, look how strong she is, and then...
Which I'm sorry, I don't think nobody was weightlifting in the 60s. It was like pretty rare.
Really?
Well, Mystique was. You know, Charles Xavier had a very vast fortune.
Bodybuilding, like lifting weights, was like for weirdos up until like Arnold Schwarzenegger came around.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
He had a very vast fortune, so...
The fact that in this castle they have this whole gym with weights, like, I'm not buying that.
But yeah, I think it was just supposed to like, that was supposed to show like, look how strong she is, because she's supposed to be really strong because her, you know,
well, but it's also the way they treat her. They're like, you stay behind always.
I guess so,
you know? And then she does something. She's like, yeah, I did something.
She's like, yeah, I did it.
I want to talk about the scene with the anchor really quick where Magneto cuts the ship in half with
cool.
the anchor. It's awesome.
It's pretty awesome.
That's it. That's all I had to say.
That's the tweet.
So at the end of the movie, Magneto gives this big speech to try to get people on his side. And I forget exactly how the speech goes. I should have written it out. But he basically identifies as American off the bat, which, just going back to what I said earlier, makes no sense at all because he's not American.
Yeah.
He probably is having like green card issues now that I'm thinking about it. There's a whole immigration scene that got cut out of this movie.
Yeah, especially because he's causing so much trouble. I'm pretty sure that there are green card issues.
Or it's probably political refugee, I would think, if he's in the U.S. But yeah, he's not American. He's like from Germany and Poland. Yeah. I don't know. I think it's weird. And at the very end of the movie, he like gets an American accent all of a sudden.
And then his kids are Russian. Like, I'm just realizing this.
Yeah.
Wow. He's been to some places.
Oh yeah, he's like, they're gonna try to hurt all the mutants. It doesn't matter where you're from. Like, American.
I can feel them
why
with my
did you
metal.
lead with American?
Yeah.
Also, okay, maybe Brittni can shine light on this. At the very end, Charles Xavier kisses that FBI agent.
Yes.
And none of us, there's no romantic buildup to that, or am I crazy?
But Moira and him actually do have a thing.
In the comics.
And also...
Yeah, but not in the movies. So
I know.
What happened?
It wasn't developed very well. But, at the beginning, I think it was supposed to be...
No, it wasn't developed.
At all. In the beginning, they were supposed, he, obviously has a thing for her when he's super drunk, and he's like,
yeah, but she doesn't have a thing for him at all.
Yeah, well, she's just, at this point, trying to be I'm a woman in the CIA, trying to, make myself known, and, I'm not stupid.
That's the other thing. She's a doctor, right?
In the comics, yeah.
But not in that they don't play up that at all.
In The Last Stand, Xavier dies. Jean kills him.
Yeah, I remember that.
But in the very end, his consciousness, he has an evil twin. Charles Xavier has an evil twin.
Who doesn't?
But in the womb, Charles Xavier was so smart that he absorbed all of his evil twin's consciousness.
Ridiculous.
And disgusting. So his twin was kind of brain dead just his whole life. But conveniently, when Charles Xavier is killed, that consciousness is transferred into his evil twin, and then Charles Xavier is alive again, just in his evil twin's body.
Brittni, you just came up with all that.
No, I didn't.
It's such nonsense.
No, I remember.
I didn't.
I remember. Now that you're talking about it, I remember watching the last.
And at the very end of the movie,
what is going on?
Dr. Moira comes in and she is talking to him, and she's like, Charles.
Yeah,
and he's alive,
ends.
And they have a thing, and so she is a doctor, and for some reason they don't really show that in this movie.
Another thing, but most of the X-Men movies are not good, but we like the X-Men.
We like the X-Men, yeah.
That's why I really,
Disney.
I know, I really want Disney to do something with that.
Better.
Because I love the Fantastic Four too, but that still hasn't been done yet.
Yeah, they've screwed that up many times.
Many times. So we'll see.
Another scene I need to point out is when Beast takes J-Law's blood with the needle, and then Magneto shows up. And there's no sterilization pad. There's no Band-Aid afterwards.
They're
it's
mutants,
just stab,
Yeah,
and
they're just mutants.
he probably
they don't need any.
They're all mute.
pulled that needle out of his
She has the
butt,
leukocytes of a teenager. She's fine.
She'll recover. So I was looking through IMDb, and I think we can credit this movie with legitimately launching some careers. So James McAvoy, Fassbender.
What? James McAvoy was big before this.
He really wasn't that
He was
big.
in Narnia.
He not before this, was it?
Yeah, way before.
I don't know. I feel like he wasn't as big.
Way
He
before
wasn't
this.
started for 10 with all these other.
I feel like he wasn't as big of a lead. I feel like this solidified him. I'm not saying started his career, but
He was
solidified him as the leading action man.
I mean, I still liked him before this, but this did make me I feel like it made me love him even more, obviously, because I love X-Men.
Nicholas Hoult had been around forever, but just doing TV parts and stuff. And I just feel like a lot of people they saw them in this movie, and it just kind of solidified.
But isn't that what happens with
a
lot of Marvel movies? That's a thing.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, Narnia was in 2005.
Yeah,
it's almost 6 years before.
Yeah, but he
X-Men.
wasn't a leading man.
He was Mr. Toughness.
He was Mr. Thomas.
That's pretty
You
important.
seen that SNL sketch? Oh man, it's a good one.
And I mean, definitely helped Jennifer Lawrence's career, and then obviously Hunger Games come out, and she's just solidified as the leading lady. I feel like it helped a lot of people. This is a really good X-Men movie.
I can see what you mean. Yeah, I see where you're coming from. And yeah,
it was people that were flying around Hollywood, and then this movie kind of really. If you look at their IMDb page before and after this movie, there's just a world of difference.
The guy that plays Alex, I can't remember his name, but I loved him. He was in Taylor Swift's music video. And he was in the Hannah Montana movie too. He got a lot bigger after this. I actually worked with him. He was they had the MacGyver TV show, the remake. And he plays MacGyver in it. I worked with him on that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Is that TV show still on? Or
No, I think it got canceled.
Yeah.
Once Brittni left, they were like, nah.
The X-Men fan. Yeah.
Done with it.
We can't do it anymore.
Another thing about Jim McAvoy's acting is his genuine curiosity about all things mutant. It makes sense to me as somebody watching why he would start the school, as a character, he just makes so much sense.
Well, because, when he's little and he finds out about Mystique and he's like, oh my gosh, like, I'm not alone. There has to be more. And, like, there are probably so many more out there that also think they're alone. And, like, I want to help all of them. And, he spent all his life, especially alone, because his mom wasn't really there. And he just felt alone. Completely. So it makes sense why. And
that's what Eric says too when he's like grabbing him in the water and he's like, I thought I was alone.
And he's like, you're not alone.
He's just out there all by himself. Yeah. Oh, Eric.
But think about how many others are out there all by themselves that think that they're the only ones. That's what's crazy.
This isn't real,
right.
Brittni.
I need to make sure we come back to reality again. This isn't real. I know. I can dream, though, can't I? Yeah, I know.
No, like, talking about real-life mutants, I actually just did... I mean, there are... Like, humans are still evolving, and there's genetic quirks all the time.
I used to believe I was a mutant when I was younger.
What was your superpower?
I thought I was telekinetic. Like, I literally thought I would sit for hours and, like, try to move things, and I'd be like, no. Like, you are, like...
I remember doing that after Star Wars. I would try to, like, move stuff with my hand. I'm like, no, it's not working.
Way too practical to believe that.
No, when I was a little kid, I totally tried that.
Yeah.
No, but I was just reading about this doctor the other day, and he has this, I'm not making this up, and it's like rooted in science. It's not like some crazy superpower, obviously, but he has this ability to, when he sees like someone else feeling pain, or even he can like touch them, he like knows, he can feel their pain.
Telepathic.
No, it's not. It's not like I forget how it explained the science behind it. Like
it's like an energy transfer?
It's an empathy thing, and all humans have it just slightly. But for whatever reason, his genetics, his empathy that he experiences is like off the charts. And so, he would tell the story of like he's a doctor and he's watching this person die, and he can literally he stop breathing, he feels it exactly how the patient feels it,
which makes me think about the scene where the coin is going through Shaw's head.
Super cool, by the
way. And
it's
going he feels it going through his head too. Yeah. So that doctor you're talking about is obviously Professor
obviously. But that's I feel like that's basically like a superpower. I feel like, and he gets with all these patients and he can figure out exactly what's wrong with them because he kind of. And they don't even know exactly what's wrong with them, but he feels there's this other story. He's with this patient and he notices that their hand is just slightly trembling. And then, so he notices his hand starts trembling. And from that, he figures out what's going on. Complete empathy,
so awesome.
Craziness. Yeah.
I don't know if you guys have seen this video that's been trending, but it makes me think of this. It's a little girl who her sister tweeted and she was like, my sister has trained her pet bird to attack people that she screams at. And so it's a video and the little girl's talking to her sister and she's like, the bird's sad. And her sister's like, the bird's sad. And she just turns around at her sister and just starts screaming and the bird just attacks the camera and the camera goes black. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, I don't know how to tell you this, but your little sister is a mutant from X-Men. But so they're out there.
So where do we rank this movie on the X-Men? Is it our favorite X-Men movie?
No, it's not my favorite, but it is one of my favorites.
I think it's the best made one.
I still think the original one is the best.
The original one's pretty classic.
And then on top...
You know what? I say that I haven't seen the original in forever, so I feel like I'd have to
I
rewatch
remember the relationship between Rogue and...
Oh my gosh, that's my favorite thing. It's my favorite thing.
In the first one, you mean?
Yeah, between Rogue and Wolverine, because
the whole Cyclops love triangle, I'm not there for it. Absolutely not.
Good.
I
never liked Cyclops.
Brittni you just broke her heart. I just want you to know that. Her
Cyclops
facial
is kind of an
expression
ass.
went completely
She's with the... Are you kidding me? no, she's with this great guy.
No, I know that's the dynamic of it. What I
asshole
love
comes in with his sideburns, and she's like,
but that's the thing. That's the thing. Like, yeah, like he's hard to love when you like first meet him, but then like you see like, oh, he's such a great guy. Like he really like the dynamic between him and Rogue is just so beautiful. And like this man who has always felt alone and he feels like he has nothing, and he like literally tells Rogue, like, I'll be there for you. Like in that scene where they're on the train together and he's telling her to come back. He's like, what do you say? Do we give these freaks a second chance? And she's like, well, will you come with me? And he was like, yeah, of course. And like all that.
She likes the bad boys.
Jean, she and that's
I'm
what.
sorry.
Like,
And then that
because I love
great
Scott
guy.
too. I love
Like, he
Scott.
gets cheated on in the Notebook
James
too.
Marsden.
And
I know, James
just
Marsden's
can't
always the other guy.
deal
And it's
with
always a redhead too. Like if you think about it, it's Jean was redhead.
They're evil.
And
Just
also,
kidding.
and Enchanted too. The same thing happens with Amy Adams.
Oh my God, this poor
they're-
guy.
And they're all redheads.
Oh, James.
But yeah, anyways, I love Scott too. Like I love him so much. He's one of my favorite X-Men. And so I love that dynamic. Just the whole like, you know, between the three of them.
That's just how she feels, Tabby,
I love them.
okay?
I love
You gotta
them.
respect
But
that.
my second favorite still is Logan. That movie is just
I don't know.
Logan's
Logan's
great.
great.
it's so good.
You know, I never think of that as like an X-Men movie.
No,
but
it's an
yes.
X-Men movie.
No, but I know.
It's so good. But yeah,
That is true. That probably would be my favorite.
my favorite is still the original. It always will be. But my second favorite is definitely
I should
Logan.
rewatch the original. It's been a while.
I have it on DVD.
I'm sure you do.
I wanted to say something about the environments and interior designs in this movie versus the makeup artist.
Okay.
So J-Law's fashion is really groovy. We see a lot of like high-waisted pants. I actually really
Right.
like the 60s fashion.
Yeah.
I love that scene of Magneto sitting in the hotel room in Geneva and those green curtains. Like all our grandmas had those like green colored, like our grandma had a whole bathroom where everything was that green
God.
color. It was so hideous.
Green
not
toilet
saying.
seat cover. It was a fuzzy
my
green
God,
toilet seat
yeah.
cover.
And then I don't know who the makeup person was and hair. Like they just didn't get the memo. Like I was looking up
Yeah.
what strippers looked like in the 60s, and I was, you know, going through a bunch of pictures, and it's the feathered hair and all the different things. Like
Right.
Angel didn't have that hair.
No.
J-Law, her hair is like too curly and too like early 2000s.
Yeah.
And for some reason the hair and makeup is super modern and doesn't remind me of
A
the
lot of
60s
times that happens.
at all.
For sure. I used to work on the Goldbergs, and I feel like sometimes the makeup artists there, they were just very, like, just trying to get things done for, like, the school kids. And so every day it was just very, for me, they'd just be like, okay, yeah, like, just put on some, like, pink lipstick, half pony, yeah, that's fine, like, that'll work. And I feel like sometimes that's how they just get. And especially when they're doing period pieces that almost feel like modern. Like I feel like a good example of this is Stranger Things. Sometimes they just hire makeup artists that are more modern, and they just go with it because they're like, this is what looks good on them. Like this is what's good for their face.
We brought this up in an earlier episode, but if you watch like Jane Austen period drama from the 70s, everybody's hair is like up to the heavens. I'm like, nobody was wearing that in like the 1820s.
But go off, sis. Yeah, pretty much.
Oh, something else about that training montage that I have never seen in a training montage, because it's always a starting point of sucking, and then by the end we're awesome, right? Those are training montages.
Yeah.
And this one is hilarious. My brother was like laughing his face off when Ron Weasley like falls in the leaves, like
Banshee.
Yeah, when Ron Weasley.
Ron Weasley.
They push him off the windowsill and he's like,
That was so good.
But I can't remember a single montage where they return to the beginning of the montage. Does that make sense? Like it's Charles and Magneto, and they're having that moment, and he can't move the satellite dish, and then the montage scene ends with the development of that moment that we first started out with.
Yeah.
Or sorry, because we end with them looking at the TV, I think the beginning of the montage is actually like the end of the week. Sorry, does that make sense? Like, I think that moment between them is like the last moment of the week, but we start out with it in the montage.
oh, really?
Yeah.
You think so?
Yeah, because he like is waving his gun at the TV. He, for some reason, still has the gun, Magneto,
Right.
and then he's like waving it in the room.
Right.
But yeah, find that really brilliant narratively, and I hadn't seen it
Wait, no.
before.
The scene between James McAvoy and Fassbender, that's... So the beginning of the montage, at the end of the montage, that's still the same...
It's still the same scene.
Yeah.
Right, you said it was a week
Same
later.
time.
No, I think it's not at the beginning of the week. I think that scene happens at the end
Oh, I
of the
see
week.
what you said, that
Yeah.
whole scene.
Yeah.
Yes, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, well done.
Well done.
Good job, guys.
Did you look up what this director did besides this movie, by any chance?
Well, he also did The Last Stand, didn't he?
No, he was like a producer and writer on The Last
Oh,
Stand.
that's right, because we were starting to watch some of the extras, and they
Oh,
were
yeah.
saying that they wrote the script for that third X-Men movie in a week because they didn't have anything.
They hired
ready.
this director, Matthew Vaughn, they like hired him and a few other people. When they started filming The Last Stand, there was like no script. And he just like briefly
Wow.
mentioned this in the first class special features. Like, yeah, we knocked out the script in 6 days. And like Tabby and I were just like, well, that's why that movie was a
Yeah.
disaster.
It makes me sad because, like, I love the idea of that movie and I love the Dark Phoenix comics, and Jean Grey is my favorite character.
Mm-hmm.
And it just had so much potential. And now I don't even want to, like, the new Dark Phoenix. I love Sophie Turner. Like, I love Sophie Turner. I think she's great. I love Game of Thrones. I love Sophie Turner. I don't think she should be Jean Grey. And now I'm, like, just worried because I just love Jean so much. And this new movie, I just don't think it's going to be very good. Just Sophie Turner plays, like, the victim very well. And she plays, like, the tortured soul. And that's just not Jean. Jean's, like, the popular girl at school. Like, she was always the popular girl that everyone loved. And, like, you know, she has 2 men fighting over her. And Sophie Turner is just very, like, you know, the tortured soul and, like, the damsel in distress.
But so this director, Matthew Vaughn, I just want to finish on him. So he used to be the producer for all these Guy Ritchie movies like Snatch and Lock, Stock, Two Smoking Barrels. And I think he's actually partially colorblind, they found out.
Oh.
But so he was a producer for all these movies, and he's like, well, I want to direct too. So he directs Layer Cake, which I don't know if you ever saw
he
it.
directed
That's like
Layer
what
Cake.
got Daniel
No.
Craig to be James Bond. No, because there's this one scene in Layer Cake where he's like almost pretending to be James Bond, and the James Bond people saw that and they're like, he would be a great James
Oh
Bond.
my gosh,
It's this like indie British movie that basically plays like a Guy Ritchie movie. It's the first movie he ever directed, and then he directs Stardust, which I know you
Oh
love.
my god, he did it.
And then he makes Kick-Ass, which I love.
Yeah,
it's
I
like
love
a
that.
great
Yes.
superhero movie.
No thanks.
I
don't know why you don't like
Thanks.
that. I love that movie.
It's so good.
It is really good.
they were-
Great Nicolas Cage
Best
performance.
Nicolas
Yeah.
Cage. Yeah.
Did you
No,
know they were
that's
planning
true.
on making like a Hit Girl spinoff, but then they ended up not doing
yeah,
it. That
it
would have been
didn't
so
happen.
good.
Oh, I like Stardust too. I didn't realize that.
And then he made X-Men First Class. So he's like crushing it as a director. And now he's
Yeah.
making all those Kingsman movies, which I'm not the
yeah.
biggest fan of.
I don't like them at all.
But
I didn't see them.
like
because-
pretty good run for a first-time director. You have like
Yeah.
Layer Cake, Stardust, Kick-Ass, and then First Class, which is not a perfect movie, but it's a good movie.
It was the one that revamped the X-Men thing. Like
Right.
they were dying hardcore,
Yeah.
and then that movie did such a at least brought it back, even though
Yeah.
they blew it again.
I
But at least
know.
it brought it back
I know.
into the limelight.
I
So
know.
obviously he did a good enough job to like.
They are revamping the X-Men again, though, with the New Mutants. That's going to be the new.
Right.
I think they're doing a trilogy of it.
I'm
We'll see.
sure.
We'll see how it, how the first
But
one
no,
goes.
Tabby and I started watching the special features on X-Men First Class,
Right.
and so Brian Singer
I had to turn it off.
was like
What?
the major producer on this movie, and they
Right.
kept interviewing him, and it was just it was just a week because he's just a complete scumbag.
We've
who-
known for
Yeah.
like 20 years that this
Molest
guy,
little
they're
boys.
bringing him
I
like
know.
boys to his mansion. None of these, it's such an insidious industry. None of these famous actors are like, oh no, I won't work with him.
I know.
It's
I
just
know.
upsetting to me.
It's sad.
And I'm glad we chose this movie before I looked up the director, and I was like, oh my god, please don't be a Bryan Singer movie. And then I was like, oh good.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, his days seem to be over. He
I
got
think so.
he got fired from Bohemian Rhapsody, and
Right.
which
but
not because of that, but then
But
when
it's-
he got fired, it like re-brought up that whole kid
Right.
molestation thing. I'd be very surprised if he ever.
But it's because of like bad press. It's not because anybody actually feels bad
Right,
about it.
right.
You know, that's the problem I'm having.
Yeah, I agree.
And yeah, we don't need to go into it further because I'm just gonna be
Okay.
upset. But can I talk about a scene where Beast turns into Beast.
Yeah.
There could have been so many ways to film that. You could have had like a shot of the room and then he turns with the CGI, and instead they just focus on very specific body parts and have the camera follow and then zoom the camera in and out like a heartbeat. And then it ends with a shot of like his reflection.
Or his shadow, right?
No, I think it's a reflection of one of the like beakers that he breaks.
Yes, you're right. Yes.
It's brilliant. It's so good. You don't need to do a big like CGI thing because it's all the camera doing all the work for you.
It doesn't need to look like a werewolf.
And that was such a great choice.
It was.
The way they did that.
It's the greatest like werewolf or Jekyll and Hyde transformation that is not in either one of those movies.
Yeah.
It's like how it should be done.
It's not cringy, And another thing, like I was really excited to see that transformation because I love Hank in the old ones. And in the old ones, like Hank is so like funny, and like they make his character really like funny and like kind of like the.
Well, he's like the nerd, right? Like
he is nerdy, but they make him like he's supposed to be super like charismatic and funny. And then you see like this transformation, and like how bitter he was after it. And so like it's almost like that character development because you saw like how bitter and how angry he was about it, but you know that later on he's like accepting and like he's this happy person and like he's this funny person. So
the Jekyll and Hyde, there's some really weird like literary references. So they talk about Jekyll and Hyde, which I didn't have as much of a problem with, even though the comparison isn't entirely accurate. And then they talk about Frankenstein a lot too. And it just seems like something a writer threw in, like going, what does the average Joe know about books? Like, oh, they know these two books. Because then Magneto has a line of like, I'm Frankenstein's monster. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. Like his relationship with Kevin Bacon has no similarity between Victor and the creature he created. And it just feels very forced and thrown in. And it's like, I don't like it.
It sounds cool, man.
Exactly. Like, it just is supposed to
And honestly, there's
cool.
probably a lot of people that don't actually even know the story. So
yeah, that's what they're relying on. And that's what I think is a little... If you're assuming your audience is stupid, that's never a good place to start.
Yeah.
You know?
Not stupid, but just uneducated.
Uneducated,
in that field, like in that area. And so,
I don't have like a huge problem with it.
No,
but I get what you're saying.
Just thought that one was a little silly. The Jekyll and Hyde I was like okay with because it's Charles doing his little analysis. They have that scene, and he is actually supposed to be like the educated person.
Yeah,
you know. So I didn't mind that.
Well, I think the Jekyll and Hyde thing kind of foreshadows, obviously, because then you have the scene afterwards of him transforming. So it's sort of like, comes together. But yeah.
And him like losing control because he keeps injecting himself, and then he like ends up losing control in the story, and that's exactly what happens with Beast. Oh, a line I really loved is at the very end is Kevin Bacon saying, "I'm so proud of you, Eric," and the way he says it too, it just rings true with a lot of dynamics in abusive relationships where your abuser will make you dependent on their approval.
Yeah,
and it felt very real. Yeah. It felt like somebody really did their like psychology research on their relationship between Kevin Bacon and Magneto. I thought that was very well done.
Yeah.
Two great villains in the Marvel. I like Kevin Bacon as the villain. Yeah, I know you're like weird about
No,
him.
I just don't like his German scenes. But once
yeah,
we're done
like
with
the
that,
character Shaw. Yeah, he's good.
I think it's really good.
He's a good
I like it. Good old Kevin.
I think our only problem with that last scene was the evil villain doing his monologue. Magneto talking to Kevin Bacon was too long. Especially because the music, whoever did the music editing, the music's already going full force, and then it just keeps going for like another minute until we finally get to that coin scene where the coin is going through, and it's too long of a build-up for me for a really, really awesome scene.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. It was a little much. I feel like they were just trying to like cram a lot of information in there. Which happens sometimes, unfortunately, but I do agree.
And also at the end where Charles, what we see the difference between Magneto and Charles is able to see the bigger picture. He knows that what they're doing to them is wrong, and they're trying to kill them with the missiles. But if they retaliate, he can see what consequences that will have. And Magneto, what they keep saying is he keeps getting stuck in his anger and isn't able to be the bigger
but
person.
almost on top of it of not just his anger, like Magneto sees a different future. He sees if we don't do something now, then the mutants are going to go extinct. And like we need to do something now about it because we have the opportunity. Like we're stronger. We can. And Charles is more so of like, no, like humans will make like the right moral choice. Like we just have to give them the chance. Like they'll accept us eventually, which he's wrong.
Well, because also
But
if you
that's the problem.
if you send the missiles back to take all those ships out, it'll be exactly what Shaw wanted.
Yeah.
It'll start that nuclear
Right.
war, which I think Magneto in that moment is just like, rah, you know.
Magneto more so is just like, no, like let's just kill the human. Like he's not thinking about like that's gonna start nuclear war. He's thinking like let's just take all of the missiles and just kill both sides. And like then like let's just even move beyond that and just kill the rest of the normal.
Well, he's
Homo
really not all that
sapiens.
different from Shaw, though. Right?
Yeah, but yeah, exactly. And
Which
that's
is
more
the
so
point,
because
right?
Shaw
Yeah.
was like, if I do this, then the humans will just destroy each
Right.
other. But Magneto's more so of like, no, I want to destroy them. Like
Right.
I want that. Like I want that victory on myself. And like in the thing that's crazy about it is because Charles is so like, no, like humans will make the right moral choice. We just have to give them the chance. And then Days of Future Past happens, and like you see the future where they created those like robots to go and destroy the mutants, and like the mutants almost go extinct. So it's like,
Oh yeah.
So it's like,
I
you know,
blocked that movie
Magneto
out of my
is
head.
right. Yeah, but yeah, that was more so. It wasn't so just Magneto's angry. It's he was scared because he's been there before.
Yeah.
He didn't want a repeat of history. He
Yeah,
wanted to be on the winning
turns,
side.
He turns into exactly what he hated because he has no
Exactly.
trouble killing these people.
Exactly,
and,
because
like,
they're different from
those
him.
people on those ships, they have kids and they have but he has no problem killing those people.
Yeah. And his mindset of it, because, just like you said, Charles literally says, like, those are good, innocent people.
Right.
They're just following orders. And he,
Trigger.
And then it's like the Kill Bill alarm is going off in
Yeah.
like Magneto said. My last note is just something that may only be funny to me. But when the Hellfire Club and Emma Frost is there with the general and she's like, I brought the entertainment. And then
Yeah.
it's 20 strippers. And then we find out it's like a tiny little room that goes into an office. And it just
Yeah.
reminded me of like the clown car. Like more and more people start
Yeah.
going in
Think
this
about
little room. I'm like, what happened to all those strippers? Like, where
Yeah.
did they go? That's it. I just
Yeah.
thought it was funny.
Did they all go into that little room?
They all went into like the
But then they're not
curtain.
even on the other
there.
side. Yeah, where did they go? I didn't think about that. What a clown car. I got a little game to play. It'll take 2 seconds. So this movie was made 8 years ago, right?
yeah.
I want to see if you guys know how old the actors are now. Because I thought they're all like younger or older than they actually are.
Okay,
wow.
okay.
How old do you think James McAvoy is?
I think he's 41.
Oh, you're good. He's 40.
Okay, okay.
Michael Fassbender?
I think he's 45.
Yeah, 43 to
42.
Oh, okay. He's only 42.
How old is J-Law now?
She's probably
She's
like
38.
30. Yeah, I was going to say
38? Oh my god! She's 28 right now.
Oh, she's 20.
Oh, yeah, I guess that makes sense. She was 19.
I thought she was I thought
I thought
just
she
read
was
an
in
article
her-
and she was in her 30s.
I thought she was in her 30s.
No, she was only like 20
we grew
when
up together.
She peaked too soon.
She was born in 1990.
That's how I feel about Jamie Bell too. Like these people, I think people feel like that about the Harry Potter actors
Yeah,
too.
Yeah.
People
they've
you
just been around forever.
grow up with.
See, like I thought James McAvoy, both him and Fassbender look really young to me in this movie.
Yeah, they do.
But they were like already in their 30s, which I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, which goes back to Charles. I met Eric when we were 17.
Eric. Okay, and then Nicholas Hoult. How old do we think he is?
Nick Holt,
'Cause he's
let's
been around
see.
forever,
About
too.
a Boy came out when.
I bet she's right around the same age as Jennifer Lawrence.
Give me a number.
27.
No,
28,
he's older.
maybe 29.
What you got?
About 32?
31.
29.
29.
That was right.
He's
Yeah, you're
Taylor
right.
Swift's age.
Yeah, that's great.
And then last but not least, how old is Kevin Bacon today?
Oh, God.
Oh,
Bacon,
he's in his
60.
50s or 60s.
Yeah, let's say
Five.
57.
Just 60.
Oh, 60.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, I knew that.
Just 60.
I actually thought he was a little older than, because it seems like he's been around forever too. I
Yeah,
thought
but
was
he
like
started
in his
really
late
young,
60s.
too.
I
Yeah,
know.
he did. He started like when he was
Yeah.
a baby.
Such
I
a.
just keep thinking of that scene in Avengers when he's like, then we asked Thor, they're like, "Oh, is Kevin Bacon part of the Avengers?" And he's like, "He may be. I haven't been there for a while. He may be a new addition to the group."
I think I was.
Wait, when was
Scarlett
this?
Johansson in-
And Infinity Wars.
I don't remember this.
Yeah, there's a scene where like Thor's on the ship with the Guardians.
Yeah.
And Mantis asks like because Thor says Avengers, Earth's mightiest heroes, and Mantis is like, "Is Kevin Bacon part of the group?" And he's like, "He might be. I haven't been there for a while. He may be a new addition to the group."
So yeah, what else we got? Anything?
No, that was
The only thing that I want to touch
movie.
on that I was like really disappointed in was at the very end when Eric like breaks in and he like comes up to Emma and he's like, "Oh, I was hoping you would fill a void." Then you never see Emma again. Ever again.
Well, also that scene makes no sense where she draws a circle in the glass and she's talking to the captors, but then she's still just sitting there.
I think she was just letting them keep her.
But then they
because at
just
this
put her
point-
in this like normal room where she could really have just escaped.
Which I think she knew
anytime.
she could escape. She was just letting them keep her because she was just like,
But I don't get. So
I don't know why. But
Magneto and Charles Xavier capture this lady, but then just like don't.
they
do
don't. Yeah, that's the
anything.
thing. They don't do anything.
It's weird.
Also, at the end, when Magneto comes at the end and like tells her that he wants her to join,
Right.
they never use her again.
Yeah, she's
In any
never
of the
in any of the
movies.
movies.
They never
Yeah.
use her in any other movies. They never use any of them again. You don't see
Yeah.
any of them.
Well, was she
anymore.
was she
silly.
permanently injured
Except for
when they
Alex.
messed her neck up when they broke
No,
her
I don't
thing?
think-
I don't
I don't
feel
think
like
she
she just
go-
heals, right?
I don't know. That's what
No.
I'm asking.
That
because
was
she,
another
like-
thing that was weird. Was like
could
how
she
did
like break after because she's been cracked?
Yeah.
Like,
But
so
what was weird also in that scene was how did he know that like strangling her was going to make her like break out of that?
Because they keep saying she's made out of diamond form, so he probably knew that applying like pressure and stress.
But how
to
does he
certain
know
rocks,
if she like went back to Crystal? Like he was like, if she like goes back to Crystal again, just give her a gentle tap. How did he know that?
he's really smart.
I guess, but
Yeah.
Come on. Well, that,
It
I,
was
just,
weird. I
I
don't
didn't
know.
know if they like if she healed or if she had like a healing.
I feel like it's like
ability.
part of her. She would just like heal over time.
yeah, I feel like it
That's
was
kinda
just
the
like
vibe I got.
right. That's what I figured.
And I'm right, so.
Yeah, you're amazingly right all the time. In your mind.
But good movie. It's like a really rewatch. It's like an easy watch. It's like not too
yeah.
long. It's a good movie.
It's a really good movie. I love it.
The other thing I found really funny is when Havoc's suit gets destroyed, he has like a boob window. Like,
Yeah.
it's like this circle
I
in his
know.
chest. It always just looks funny to me.
He looks like a Cyclops. Foreshadowing.
Yeah, I feel like some of the some of the superheroes are just little like he has like these laser hula hoops and she got little butterfly wings that can spit little fireballs. It's just like a
Laser
little too
hula
silly. I don't
Laser
know.
hula hoops. That's great.
He's like, everyone stand back, and then he's like, woo! He's like, these hula hoops.
Gyrating.
Also, like he can like shoot lasers out of his fists, but they don't even show that.
Yeah, it's a little silly at parts, but it's all good.
Yeah.
All good. All right. Well, thanks for coming on, Brittni,
Thanks for having me.
our resident expert. And thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you next week.